Hey Facebook, Charlotte here. Found a little bit of time tonight and poured myself a glass of Chambord and gonna make another video, obviously. If you paid attention to my posts, you would have seen a few weeks ago I talked about how my brain works. How I find a particular topic that I'm not 100% sure of. And because I want to be a person of intellectual integrity, I end up researching the living hell out of this topic, right? I'll read everything that I can about it. I'll interview everybody I can about it. I'll constantly talk about it until I can really feel like my stances are based in fact, not placating my human ego, and are something that's honest and good for society. And so this topic is going to be about what my last video was about still, the concept of feminism. Now, as I'm talking to people about gender critical theory and what makes a woman, I'm finding that a lot of people don't see women as a class. And to me, that's kind of bizarre, because if anybody studied class history, the first thing that you would learn is that women are the very first class. And the reason why women are the very first class is because women produce laborers. All right? And you need laborers in excess of them in order to get them to be able to accept lower wages, accept lower value than what their labor produces. So hence, you have to subjectify women and get them to essentially breed as much as humanly possible in order to create a shit ton of laborers to take shitty jobs so that someone else can profit. Okay? So exploitation of women is before any other form of class. It's before ageism. Sexism comes before racism and colonialism. It comes before, you name it. Women's issues supersede it. I mean, even during the time of slavery, the whole point of that was because we lived in an agricultural society, we needed to have more bodies than women were actually logically able to produce, and so you go to another place, you conquer the territory, you take those people, and you work them as slaves. Right? So we live in a modern time in which a lot of people engage in the oppression Olympics. And so all these issues that our modern society suffers from are kind of pitted up against each other for what matters more. And women, even though they are the eldest class of exploitation, often get pushed to the side. They're dismissed as the idea that, well, you guys aren't really suffering anymore, or, well, your issues aren't as important. And that's frankly horseshit, because no matter what position you take this from, if you want to claim that racism is the most pressing issue in society, well, how do you plan to end that? You're going to need strong, rebellious people that are going to be willing to challenge the system, and strong, rebellious, challenging people aren't born from weak-willed, subservient women. If you want to take it from the ecological perspective, which is climate change is our most urgent issue, which is a great argument, frankly, then, well, the best thing that you can do is try to ethically promote women being their own human beings instead of incubators, and that way we produce less people, therefore we consume less, and the planet is less harmed by our activities. But anyway. I could go on this big tangent about how, abortion is central to what we learned during the Black Plague with, reproduction, dropping off, etc. But I won't go there because I still haven't learned editing skills. Essentially what I want to do is I want to tell you about how women are a class, and that people don't know this. And I think one of the reasons why people don't know this is because women are taught to, well, as the Bible put it, suffer in silence. we're not supposed to talk about the things that actually make us women. And so that's why so many people have the idea that womanhood is something that's gender instead of a reproductive condition that a class concept is predicated upon in order to exploit a reproductive labor. And so that's why so many people think that they can call themselves a woman without being socialized as a woman, being born as a woman, having any of the lived consequences as a result of being female-bodied, or identify their womanhood by those behaviors which are actually created by gender constructs in order to suppress us. So I would like to encourage my fellow women that are watching this to make your own damn videos. And I know it's going to be long, but I want to hear from you women what it is that really made you feel like your being female separated you from being male or lesser than a human being. What it was that makes you feel like you belong to a class and not just the ownership of your organs or having lady brain. You know? So I'm going to talk about, and because it's such a huge topic that would end up making like an hour-long video, I'm going to break up and try to explain to you small bits of my life that showed me that as a woman, I am other. And maybe talking about those experiences in the decades of my life can help you to understand why I say that being a woman is being a class. So, I'm going to have to start talking to you about some very, very personal issues. Issues that I normally would never discuss with anybody outside of my family because they're rather embarrassing and personal. But I think they need to be talked about. And I think if my friends are the caliber of good people that I believe them to be, which is why they're on my friends list to begin with, they won't, object to what I'm about to say here. So I'm just going to basically cover, like the first 10 years of my life. And I'll have to maybe do 3 videos in order to cover, 4 videos in order to cover the decades. But just want to give you small little samples, essentially, of how I learned that women are different than men and that I'm not a full human being as compared to a man from the concept of class. So I kind of got to go back in history and tell you some things. I was born in 1975. I was the 6th pregnancy of my mother, but only the 4th of her surviving children. And that actually isn't too bad, even though my mom had a terrible time in labor and she nearly died. And her life mainly was being a chef, maid, mother, and brooding mare for my father. It wasn't anything compared to who I'm named after. Her mother, Charlotte, who had 11 children, and also cooked and cleaned and took care of kids and was a brooding mare to her husband, Paul. It didn't matter that my grandmother was extremely intelligent and could speak 7 languages. That's a feat nobody else in my family can do. She could hear a language and just memorize it. That because she was born a woman, she was denied education, married off, became a brooding mare, worked the fields, nearly died several times in labor. That's who I'm named after. My mom was definitely more privileged than Charlotte, number 1. My mom is named Josiane. And she too, really intelligent woman, she inherited her mother's brain. Very gifted, very talented. She has such deep compassion. But she was a woman too. My first understanding of that wasn't through these tales of what my mother survived, or what my grandmother survived, or my great-grandmother, or my father's mother, but rather something that I seen. This is going to be kind of embarrassing, and I don't in any way wish to humiliate my family. But I think what I'm going to share is something many of you will understand. Because I come from a traditional immigrant family, my father was born in 1940 Germany, lived during World War II, which was a very, very violent time. And my mother was born in the French side, surviving World War II as well, which was a very, very violent time. And so violence was rather wholesale part of their culture. I was 5 years old, just before I started kindergarten, and I followed my mother everywhere. She was my number one caretaker, so she was my entire world, and I was at her skirt, following her wherever she went around the house, whatever she did. It was just Mom and me, while my older siblings went to school with my father. I was in the living room. My mom just got done making a big breakfast and giving the lunches to my siblings and my father and walking them out towards the car. And I sat in the living room and I was watching through our front wooden door that had an inlaid window, the sunbeams coming through, and the dust particles from when the door pulled open across the carpet, scattered up over the sunbeams. And I remember being so little that I was like hypnotically interested in these little particles dancing on the sun. And my mom went up to the window, as she did every morning, the good June Cleaver she was, and waved goodbye to my father. Now, I don't remember what they were fighting about that morning, but I remember the tensions were kind of high. I mean, I was pretty young, so you have to understand, I don't really have a full memory of what happened. I basically remember the trauma of that moment. Because one minute, I was really feeling like everything was normal, mystified by the planet and the simple things like how dust particles dance on sunbeams, as my mother waved out the picture window. And then I seen my mother's hand turn and give my father the finger. Oh, man. That man slammed on the brakes, and I don't even know what the hell brakes were, but I heard that screeching sound up the street. And he threw that car in reverse, and he came back, and he came flying through that front fucking door. And the next thing I know, that sunbeam shit display I was watching just boom, burst open, and in came my angry, angry father. Grabbed my mother. God damn it, Josiane! You will go by the fucking window. I am your husband. You will wave goodbye to me correctly. And my mom, my beautiful, loving mom, became so scared and frigid, and she just agreed with whatever he said. And I could tell that she was fearful, and it was shocking to me, because I loved both my parents. And I especially loved my mother, who was my full-time caretaker. And she was my grizzly bear, the person that took care of me and would defend me at all costs. So to see her cower in front of my father shocked me. How could he do that to her? And why didn't she defend herself? And it was the first time that I really understood women are weaker than men. And women cannot disobey men, because if they do, they'll get beat up. And I'm a girl. Now, don't get me wrong. My dad wasn't a brute. In fact, my dad was more enlightened than most men born in the 1940s. He really was. He was originally a foundry worker, but he went on to school and he became a professor and a flaming liberal that fought for so many different classes. He was really a shining example of what a good human being would be, and if more people were like him, the world would be a better place. But he was man. a man of his time. And so he didn't really understand what that did to my mother. I think if he really understood what that did to me, he wouldn't have did it. But he learned as he got older. And he allowed my mother to go to school. Once I, the youngest, ended up going into school myself. My mom begged him for years to please be able to get an education. And my dad relented, and my mom went to school for child psychology. And the day she got her degree, I was 12 years old. And she stepped off that stage. And we were all waving and clapping, so happy for her. But she didn't even see us. She didn't even see us because she was too busy talking to her father, who died in 1972. So therefore, he wasn't even there. And my mom wasn't religious, so it's not like she said it to him. She said it to resolve something in herself. And that was, see, Dad, I have a degree. I'm worth more than just feeding the geeses. My mom was a woman. She was the first woman in her family ever to have a degree. Because before her, women gave birth and they fed the geeses. Those kinds of things that women see every day is what defines women as a class. My dad used to tell my brothers when he came home from work, right? My mom, made this big, beautiful dinner. She was a chef over in France, and this woman can cook like you wouldn't believe. And she'd make these massive meals to thank my father for working hard all day. And she'd lay out that table, take her hair out of her bun, and dress herself up to look sexy for my dad, because her role as a woman is to be sexy for my dad, and she knew that he liked long hair. So, in addition to having to cook, she had to objectify herself too. And he'd sit at the table, and he'd say to everybody, "How is it at school today?" And he'd go down the line, My eldest brother would tell him what apprenticeship program he was thinking of signing up for, what he's working on with his car, all his little interesting things he was doing. And my dad would, discuss with him, "Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and you can make money doing this, and maybe you want to check out this program, and I'll talk to somebody." And my next brother, same thing. "Hey, you're really good at sports, and good job. You're going to get me that Letterman's jacket, right? And I think it's a good idea if you work for that company. Yeah. And he'd get to my sister, and she'd say, "I made a yarn craft box in school." And he would say, "Oh, you can show it to me after dinner. Nice job. Good job." And then I would say, "Oh, I really want to be an art teacher. I'm going to be an art teacher someday, because I love crafts too." And my dad would say, "Oh, Charlotte, you're cute. Don't worry, someday you'll grow up and you'll get married." Now, my dad didn't say that to me because he was a sexist. My dad was an educator. And my dad used to always tell me, "Charlotte, you're the smartest out of all my kids." I taught myself to read when I was 4, and I used to read with him every day when the paper came. So I knew that he respected my brain. But I was also born a girl. And during the 70s and 80s, that meant you would get married and have kids. I mean, who were our role models, right? If you were wealthy, maybe you could grow up like Eleanor Roosevelt to become the wife of the president. Yay. Or maybe you could become a troublemaker like Gloria Steinem. But I wasn't rich, so I wasn't going to become Eleanor Roosevelt. And I didn't want to be a troublemaker. So I wasn't going to become Gloria Steinem. The only other options were your sexual utility. Marilyn Monroe, James Mansfield, Sophia Loren, Brigitte Bardot. Do you think it's by mere coincidence that most women can tell you who are famous sex objects, models, than they can a list of female scientists? That's not by mere coincidence. So, I was going to get into how my elementary education taught me my difference between my being a girl versus my being a boy. But I'm already at 22 minutes, so apparently I gotta end this video. Because I don't want it to get too long and then you guys lose interest because I know I haven't been enough. But I will attempt to do that. And I don't know. I hope that you guys share what you got. And I hope you don't get too offended by what I posted. I didn't mean to get all emo and shit. And I certainly don't mean to knock on my family. I'm saying these things because these are normalcy as I know it. As a woman born in 1975, my life is not much different than other people's lives, other women's lives. Anyway, good night, Facebook.